Hello, everyone, and welcome to this program today. My name's Lisa Levinson. I'm one of your hosts. I work with In Defense of Animals and am the co-founder of the Interfaith Vegan Coalition. And this event today is specially produced for Interfaith Harmony Week. And the title of it is Love Thy Neighbor. And it's also a conversation and animal meditation with Reverend Sarah Bowen, who's here with us today. So it's our delight to share this program with you, to introduce you to our animal neighbors. I'm going to introduce you first to my co-host, which is Judy Carmen. She's the author of Peace to All Beings and the co-founder of the Interfaith Vegan Coalition. Hi, Judy.
Hi, Lisa. Thanks. And hi, everybody. I'm so glad you joined us. We are so excited to do this and really, really honored to have Reverend Sarah Bowen with us. She is an amazing person, and she's going to do a meditation that you all will love. But to introduce her a little bit, she's an animal chaplain, an award-winning author, and academic dean of One Spirit Interfaith Seminary. She is a fierce advocate for all creatures, so we're very glad she's here with us. Her most recent book is Spiritual Rebel, a positively addictive guide to finding deeper, perceptive, and higher purpose. She's also a member of Spiritual Directors International, the Association of Pet Loss and Bereavement, and several recovery communities. She guides others in connecting with the higher power of their own understanding. Her website is sarahbowen.com. So without further ado, Sarah, we would love to hear from you. Welcome.
Thank you, Judy. Thank you, Lisa. It's always nice to know what I'm supposed to be doing when I hear my bio. Like, oh, that's what I do. That's right. So I'm so excited to be here with Lisa and with Judy. And I'm going to ask everybody to go ahead and mute yourself if you can. That's fabulous. So in the tradition of that I was raised, I'm a Presbyterian preacher's kid who also at some point decided to enter the family business, but in an interfaithy kind of way. So you're going to hear me use a lot of different language today, and whatever language for spirituality is comfortable for you, feel free to insert it over what I say. Let's keep this really wide and expansive. But in the Christian tradition that I grew up in, there was this idea of the Good Samaritan, which was a story about, what do you do when you come upon someone who's suffering? Well, what is our response? And when asked that, Jesus says, you take care of the people who are suffering if they're your neighbors. And the person who's quizzing him, of course, asks, but who's my neighbor? And I think the value of this parable, regardless of what tradition that we're in, or if we're in no tradition at all, is that question of who's my neighbor? Who am I required to, or who do I feel comfortable with extending my compassion to and being concerned about their suffering? And being a preacher's kid and a rambunctious child and an animal lover, I kind of took that on as a 6-year-old. And I would come home from school with my little lunchbox and pick up all the dead critters I saw on the way home, put them in there, take them home, and bury them in the bushes because I understood that when someone died, you buried them. That's what my dad did. He was gone for a lot of funerals. And I was really concerned about all these little chipmunks and squirrels and folks. And my mother had many, many interesting conversations with me about this. And I got a lot of new lunch boxes. I went through many, many lunch boxes. And then when I went into seminary, I really wanted to expand my focus, something that had been with me for decades, of how do we help suffering species? So today we're going to talk about that a little bit. So first we're going to start with an animal meditation. And I want to start with 3 statistics for you. And then we'll go into an AV type of mode. So here's 3 interesting statistics. Humans make up 0.01% of the life on planet Earth. That's it. We're 0.01%. And yet we've caused 83% of the loss of all wild mammals since the dawn of civilization. Not necessarily we here in this Zoom group, but we as humanity, as we've encroached on their spaces and as we've, picked up some behaviors that aren't so compassionate to other species. We actually use 72% of the available land on the planet, humans do, and about 43% of that for animal agriculture. So, that's where we are. That's the state of what we're in today. And studies have shown that using mindfulness, meditation, prayer, all sorts of different spiritual practices can open us up to being able to see some of these facts a little better. They can help us open our hearts. They can help us perhaps make different decisions in our behavior, and they can help us widen who we think is a neighbor. So I'm going to guide you here through about 9 minutes of a meditation. I'm going to start with, it'll be 4 minutes of audio. So for the first 4 minutes, you can close your eyes, you can sink in, breathe out. Notice what's happening in your body while you hear the more than human world. And then there will be a chime or a gong or a bell. And I will encourage you to open your eyes and then have a visual meditation for another 4 minutes, which will have no sound. So again, to see how it feels in your body. Notice what emotions you may have. Notice what thoughts you may have. This is not the kind of meditation where we're trying to have nothing going on. What we want to do is cultivate our mindfulness. You're also going to see in the meditation some of these beings' eyes, beautiful, beautiful eyes. And so I encourage you to look into those eyes and see what happens. And then we'll have a 1 minute reflection and we'll come back out and have some conversation. Okay? So that's the arc of where we're headed. And I'm going to share screen now. And here we go. Now I invite you to open your eyes, to direct them towards the screen, and connect with a new sense, Visio Divina. Notice what's going on in your body. Notice how your breath feels, your heart. And consider this question: how can you connect more deeply with the more than human world? What do you feel called to do? I'll be here about a minute. Take a deep breath, breathe deep. Some of you might like to stretch if your body has been still for a while. This is the way I start my mornings. This is how I connect to the fact that there are 20 quintillion other than human beings on the planet. And how do I make my decisions? How do I commit each day to make my decisions? Consider some of them. It's a big task some days. After I do this meditation, I have some other spiritual practices that I do as well. I also like to hang out with the birds and the squirrels and the chippies and everybody who lives around my home. So I hope this gives you just a little glimpse today of trans species or interspecies spirituality. We find in all of our wisdom traditions that there is concern for animals. We also hear sometimes that there isn't. And sorting through what we have heard and what we have learned is an important spiritual practice. So thanks for engaging with me right now. And I will hand this over to Lisa and to Judy. And I'll also put in the chat a link to this meditation so that if you'd like to do it again, if you'd like to share it with anyone, if you'd like to email me and suggest a critter that I missed in the meditation, I do this with groups frequently, so I'm happy to add someone else in too. Okay, Judy, Lisa, it's
Thank
yours.
you. Yeah, Sarah, thank you so much. That was just heavenly, wonderful, and I'm so grateful to you for all the work that you're doing to help people be neighbors with other than human people. And so this was just a wonderful exercise, and I want to maybe help us think even more about who our animal neighbors are, like Sarah was talking about. And I have a poem that I want to read that's always been a really important part of my life, really. And it's about a man who didn't think of animals as his neighbors until something happened really extraordinary. And so I'm going to read this. It's actually in my book, Peace to All Beings. And if you ever want to look it up, and it's called A Hunter's Poem. It was written by Lemuel Ward. And it goes like this. A hunter shot at a flock of geese that flew within his reach. Two were stopped in their rapid flight and fell on the sandy beach. The male bird lay at the water's edge, and just before he died, he faintly called to his wounded mate, and she dragged herself to his side. She bent her head and crooned to him in a way distressed and wild, caressing her one and only mate as a mother would a child. Then covering him with her broken wing, and gasping with failing breath, she laid her head against his breast, a feeble honk, then death. This story is true, though crudely told. I was the man in this case. I stood knee-deep in snow and cold, and hot tears burnt my face. I buried the birds in the sand where they lay, wrapped in my hunting coat, and I threw my gun and belt in the bay when I crossed in the open boat. Hunters will call me a right poor sport and scoff at the thing I did. But that day, something broke in my heart. And shoot again, God forbid. So I can't believe I got through that without choking up. But I think it's such a beautiful example of how people who have lived with lots of traditions don't think about what hunting really is. It's killing a neighbor, a friend, a beautiful being. They don't think about fishing. They don't think so much about eating animals. And so I think that that poem really encapsulates what happens to a person when they realize who animals really are, and that they can be our friends and our neighbors. And of course, we're talking about, when we talk about love your neighbor, we're talking about the golden rule: do unto others as we would have them do unto us. And we, of course, would not want someone to shoot us or eat us. And so that makes it pretty simple. I wanted to kind of mention some of my animal neighbors. One is Leo, the turtle, who came into our lives because someone needed to rehome him. He was caught wild and raised through this winter, and it's too cold to let him go right now. So we're keeping him in an aquarium until probably April. It's actually this coming week, it's going to be below 10 degrees here where I live in Kansas. So we got to wait to let Leo go. But in the meantime, I have discovered what I did not know about turtles. They're like dogs. When we go close to that aquarium, he gets all excited and just, it's like he wants to hug you with his arms. He's looking at us and he's just so thrilled because, as you can imagine, he's lonely, but he's okay. Okay, those are my neighbors. I guess I'll get excited to see them, even though they're not turtles. So that's Leo. And then we live out in the country and the dogs run loose out here. And I would say 4 or 5 of them come and visit us almost every day. And they don't get treats here because, I don't know what their human family would prefer on that. So I don't do that. They come anyway, just to say hi, just to greet us, to say namaste in their own way. And it's a beautiful thing. I didn't know about dogs so much because I'd always lived in town where dogs were kept in their own yards. I mean, obviously dogs love people, but these dogs I think I'll go visit Judy today. And they do. So it's just, very neighborly. I also wanted to mention, I highly recommend you watch my Octopus Teacher. It's a new movie out. And there is a scene there, this man who's a diver is diving every day in the same place. And he finds this octopus and kind of just every day goes and just kind of sits with her until he gains her trust. And there's a scene where she actually comes out of her hiding place and kind of sits on where his heart is, his heart chakra. And it's such a moving thing to see that. This is an animal that a lot of people eat. Most people would not think that they would be friendly, but he gained her trust and became her neighbor, and she returned the kindness. Another movie that I just saw is called Penguin Bloom. It's a true story about a magpie that befriended a woman who was paralyzed, and she was very depressed until Magpie came along. And it's just a beautiful, beautiful movie about how loving animals can be and what good neighbors they can be. And I think it helps us understand that these animals are people too, and they want us to do the golden rule to them in the same way that they do for us. And so expanding the golden rule out to include all species and not just the human ones. And have I got a little bit more time, Lisa?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. I'm just going to mention a few other animals that many of them get eaten. But these animals are beautiful souls. Mary, the cow, lived in the field next to, his name was Reverend Robertson. And when he got older, he became almost blind. But he had formed a friendship with Mary, and Mary, on her own, without anyone teaching her how, began leading him around in the pasture and the yard and places to keep him safe, just like a guide dog would do, but no one taught her how. And so that's a really neat story. There's millions of stories like these. A scientist wanted to see what would happen if he put duck eggs into the nest of a chicken. And he figured that the chicken, when the ducklings hatched, the chicken would try to treat them like she would her own chicks. But instead, she led the little ducklings to the water and taught them what to eat there and to go ahead and go swimming. I mean, she couldn't go with them, but she took them there, and he was astonished that she was so intelligent. She knew those were not her chicks, but she was going to take care of them. And then another one about a pig. This is another animal that many people eat. This pig's name was Priscilla, and the little boy named Anthony was drowning in a pond. And the pig jumped in. No one asked Priscilla to do that. She jumped in and got close to the boy so he could hang on to her and brought him back to shore, saved his life. So those few of those stories are actually also in the Peace to All Beings book. There's a lot of other stories too, and all of them are illustrating basically the same thing, that these animals are people too, deserving of our love, our reverence, our care, and our golden rule behavior, and our neighborliness. And as Sarah pointed out, if we see someone suffering, Jesus said, that's who you take care of. That's who you help. If you see someone suffering, it doesn't have to be a person. It could be any species. So thank you very much, Lisa.
Wow. Thank you, Judy. This is incredible to hear your stories and the stories you've gathered from others. They're so inspiring to me. And the poem that you read, can you say the name of that poem? Some people are curious.
It's called The Hunter's Poem, and it's by Lemuel T. Ward, W-A-R-D. And it can be found in my Peace to All Beings book, but it could probably be, I think you can find it online actually.
Yeah, thank you so much, Judy.
Yeah.
It's actually, like, I was bawling, literally
I
crying.
know,
I
I
cannot
know.
hear that. I've heard it before, but it's just so moving to me, and to many of
Yes.
us who've had that kind of experience, or even just a revelation of some sort. That moment when you realize, like Judy said, animals are people too. And I really love that phrase because it really says it all in so many ways. So, yeah, so thank you, Judy.
Thanks,
So I
Lisa.
wanted to add a few more of these stories and revelations, uh, sharing from my perspective. And so, again, I'm Lisa Levinson. I live in Topanga, California, which is a different sort of environment, but we have neighbors too that are animals. We have squirrels, and I have bobcats and coyotes and all kinds of wonderful creatures that are what I consider my neighbors, and I um, respect them and treat them um, kindly as I would any of my human neighbors. So, if I was to take a walk around the neighborhood, I would also see horses, and I do bring them some goodies, carrot tops, and whatnot. And we have a friendship. Like the horses get very excited when they see me, and they let me know they're happy to receive some treats. And then I walk a little further, and I have another neighbor who actually has some pigs in his yard. And at that point, I feel a little sad because I know that his pigs are not. They're not sanctuary pigs. They are going to be raised for food for his family, and I feel sad because I see them, and I know they're living their piggy life. But one day, in fact, like the last time I went for a walk, I noticed there was one fewer pig, and there were only two. So I felt this sadness that this being that I walked by daily and saw him enjoying little scratches and little things that he or she was enjoying. So these animals, they are part of our neighborhood, and you know, I think it is important um, to acknowledge that they have feelings as well. And one of the things that we can do to be respectful of them is to be very mindful of our own behaviors, including what we decide to eat and what we choose to put in and on our bodies. To recognize that a lot of these products actually come from animals, and that we can show our respect and our love for our neighbors by not consuming them. And that is the spiritual practice of being a vegan, being a person who doesn't who embodies nonviolence in their thoughts, deeds, but in their actions as well. And it's a spiritual practice. I went vegan many years ago, about 25 years ago or so, and for me, it's part of who I am as a spiritual person. It has to do with seeing each being as an equal to one another, whether it's a human friend or seeing an animal friend who may be an animal companion like a cat or a dog, or it could be a little further outside of our um, traditional circle of compassion, such as a farmed animal, or it could be a creature that we meet in the ocean. But just to really see, and that's such the importance of being able to see with our eyes and connect, as Reverend Sarah helped us do, eye to eye, and really get that feeling of the visual of who they are. And some of these creatures don't have eyes exactly like we do, but still knowing that they have their own lives, and they have their own sensations and their own pleasures. And there's a wonderful book called the Pleasurable Kingdom, I think it's called, and it is the pleasure principle, something along these lines. I'll put it in the chat box. And the book goes through. It's a really interesting story because instead of looking at evolution and looking at science in that way, biology, as everyone's trying to be far away from pain to avoid pain, it looks at it from a different point of view, that we're all seeking pleasure, and pleasure, animals also do that too. So they will seek pleasure, and he found in doing lots of behavioral studies, meaning he observing and researching and writing, that he found so many examples of animals, just in these wonderful stories like Judy had said, that animals seek pleasure, and that's a big part of their motivation too. And it's Jonathan Balcombe is the author of that book, and I will be sure to put that into the chat box. So it's really a delight to share these kinds of stories. I have one more for you, and this is from a travel story. When I was in Brazil um, I, actually decades ago, it was a while ago, but I remember I was so impressed by, they had open air um, uh, food prep areas, and all of the animals came by just to hang out. And it wasn't even like they were getting treats of food or anything, but I remember the toucans would come and just observe and hang out. And I thought it gave me a new perspective that a lot of the animals, even in the jungle there, they were like curious. They're curious. They want to come see what's going on. Where's the action today? And I think that perspective helped me so much to see animals as very similar to us. When I find an animal and someone will say, "Why is that animal coming towards me?" And I'll say, "Well, the animal's curious. They're curious. Who are you?" They're not coming to, attack you or necessarily or harm you in some way. They may be curious. You're somebody new in their environment, and they want to know. And I've experienced this with fish actually at a reservoir where I was going for a dip. It was super hot, and I went in and um, I became friends with this fish, and we played this little game where he or she would come up to me and then kind of go and hide and seek and then come back, and it was very playful and very fun. It took me a little while to figure out, oh, I think this fish is actually moving in relation to me and coming up to me and looking at me. So I love that. And years ago there was a film. It was called "I Wish I Was a Fish" or something along those lines. Of this gentleman, he looked over he was sitting on a dock and really down and out, and he looked over the dock, and he glimpsed this eye of this fish, and he tumbled into it. It was an animation film, and he becomes a fish, and then he falls in love with this girl fish. And it's just kind of the story. Of course, that might be going a little overboard, so to speak, with their animal feelings. But I think that idea of what would it be like if we were like literally stepped into their shoes or into their fins, and we would have a new perspective on what's really going on within them. Maybe they're curious, maybe they're feeling love, maybe they're reaching out to help, maybe they're suffering or struggling, maybe they're experiencing pain. So another famous person, Tolstoy, also had some animal activism in his soul and compassion for animals, and he had, there's a quote of him which I may not get correctly, but the idea is if an animal is if somebody is thirsty, we bring them water. If they're hungry, we feed them. And he really considered that for all living beings, including our animal neighbors. So thank you very much for joining in. We would love to hear some questions and comments from you. You're welcome to join us you can turn on your video and unmute yourself if you'd like to share a question or comment or story, or you could share in the chat box. That would be lovely. Let's see if anyone would like to join us and share a reflection that they have. And thank you to Reverend Sarah for including Jonathan's book, The Pleasurable Kingdom.
One can never have too many books.
Yes, well spoken from an author. Yes, and I do recommend that book. There's just so many great stories in there, and even ones you wouldn't expect, like about how an alligator can be very romantic and create an entire space like for his mate, which in turn creates new habitat for all of the animals in the Everglades. So that's a really interesting tale as well.
That's a nice Valentine's Day story there, Lisa.
It is. That's good timing to think about that. It's right around the corner. So Christina is sharing in the chat box that she's remembering a spiritual leader saying, "Love your neighbor," and that it includes all of the animals. That's very special. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. Oh, and Winter Star is asking if in defense of animals.
Oh, yes, Thomas Berry.
Yes. Tell us more, Reverend Sarah.
Or would Winter like to share a little bit about why she's popping it up? I have a couple of Thomas Berry's books. I love the way that he integrates care for the planet, care for other beings, the fact that we're all interconnected, and comes from a Jesuit perspective, which is very much different than the Dominion perspective we sometimes hear.
Yes, thank you so much, Reverend Sarah.
I would say
Winter, did Winter want to say something?
Yeah, I would say that Thomas Berry also wrote a very interesting set of papers, and one of them is about the intrinsic rights of the community of life beyond humanities, which is, for me, was a profound document that very few people have read. And I highly encourage everyone to read that.
Winter, what was the name of that piece?
I have to look up the piece. It's a series of rights documents that he wrote.
Was it The Long-Legged House?
No.
Okay.
I don't know how I can go look it up while I'm on this.
Oh, that's okay. No worries. No worries.
That's all
I
right.
was just curious since we were posting the links in there. Thank you for adding that.
I have something that I keep close by from him, and it's I'll just read a little bit of it, but it's called The Long-Legged House. And he writes, "We have lived by the assumption that what was good for us would be good for the world. And this has been based on the even flimsier assumption that we could know with any certainty what was good, even for us. We have fulfilled the danger of this by making our personal pride and greed the standard of our behavior toward the world." And then I won't read the whole thing, but he goes on, "We have been wrong. We must change our lives so that it will be possible to live by the contrary assumption that what is good for the world will be good for us." So yeah, it's a really profound, I guess you would call it an essay, but it's beautifully written. Yeah.
Thank you for bringing up those important works, and that's part of why we're having this, is so that we could explore and find resources that help to guide some of these discussions. And
but here's the art. What I was referring to is what he calls the Great Work Position papers.
Oh, okay.
So, for example, in one of them, the one that touched my heart and made me cry was, for example, starts, "Rights originate where existence originates. That which determines existence determines rights." And then it goes down on to the intrinsic rights of all beings on planet Earth. It's just a beautiful paper.
Yeah.
By the way, he capitalizes Earth. That was very early on when he capitalized Earth. And most communities don't capitalize Earth. They capitalize Mars, but not planet Earth, and that's a very religious issue. Okay,
that's a great addition, Winter. I've come across a lot of people lately who are uncapitalizing their own names to decenter themselves in conversations. So to put a little less emphasis on us as humans as well.
I hadn't heard that. Thank you.
Yeah.
yes, thank you so much, Winter. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks.
Any other comments anybody have that you'd like to share with us? Let's see. You're welcome to, I think there might be in this format, you can just unmute yourself. So I want to share, maybe before we close out, if there are no questions, just how special this is actually to be able to have these conversations together, and that it feels really important to do so during Interfaith Harmony Week, and that we wanted to offer this program to help people of faith really consider our animal neighbors, and to extend our hearts to love our animal neighbors in a way that is respectful to them, something that they would like as well. And we are very grateful to everyone who's joined in today into this conversation. We hope that this conversation maybe stimulates others and has new opportunities to spread these concepts of who are our neighbors, and who in the animal world do we consider our neighbors, and what is the difference. So even just contemplating that is really valuable, especially right now.
This is Ginny. Before we go, can you and Judy tell me a little bit more about the Interfaith Vegan, did you say it's coalition?
Mm-hmm.
What is that?
Great question. So we are a group that we formed, and Judy and I formed it together in combination with Thomas Jackson, who wrote, and actually he's a filmmaker who put together this movie that I really highly recommend for anyone of faith who is curious about these issues, and it's called A Prayer for Compassion. And he goes into looking at every one. It's an interfaith-based film, so there's every one of the major traditions. He has discussions with some of the leaders about what and why they hold compassion for animals dear to their hearts.
Okay.
And our coalition, what we do is we provide faith-based vegan advocacy tools. And so someone within a specific tradition can have more of a strategy, some materials to go to their leaders, their spiritual leaders in their communities, and say, hey, we'd like to introduce this event as a way to encourage exploring some of the vegan values that underlie that choice that many of us have made. And so on our website, which is interfaithvegancoalition.org, you can find we have these vegan advocacy kits, and we're still compiling them. We have a bunch of them for many different traditions, but you're welcome to assist with one of them if you are in a tradition that's not on our website. But those, they have songs and poems and stories. They've got books and tools of all kinds. So we encourage you can download them from there, and they're really for people within the community who want to take action and assist others to take a little more thought-provoking action in their communities with regards to animals, or if you're in an animal ministry, it'll give you lots of ideas. So
lovely. Thank you so much.
You're
I'm so
welcome.
delighted to hear about this. I'm in Michigan. So I will, and part of a Unitarian community. So I am going to take a peek at that afterwards. That's wonderful.
Yes, please do. We have actually coalition members, and we have member meetings, so that we have well over 20 or more, 25 or 30 groups that are part of the coalition. And so we actually meet, and we have actions that we're putting together, letter writing campaigns, all kinds of things. And you're welcome to join even as an individual. We have a monthly meeting for individuals too. So, we welcome everyone. And Judy, would you like to say something more about the coalition?
Well, this is one of the things that we do, is this very thing that we're putting together right now, is find out about other groups that may be pre-vegan in their message, but they're including us, that we can talk a little bit more about animals and help people expand that idea to faith groups and people of faith. So we have found that by forming the coalition, we have gotten invitations from a lot of groups like the Association for Global New Thought and this group that we're with today, and I'm thinking of the Golden Rule Day will be part of that. And so as a coalition, it's given us more visibility, I think, to get involved with these other groups that are just starting to really think about animals and how to include them in our hearts. and in our spiritual practice. So yeah, so we would love for you to come and just sign up so you can get the newsletter and stay in touch with what we're doing. And we'd love to have you come to our meetings and know about what we're doing. So thanks.
Well, this is great. I'm like a super fangirl. I've actually got both of your books, Reverend Bowen. I've got yours, and I've got yours, Judy. I've had yours in my library forever. And so I'm just like, oh my God, what am I stumbled into?
Well, this is wonderful. I'm so glad that you joined us, Ginny, and also Winter. We really encourage you. We're right now had some people who stepped up who want to help with the UU kit. So if you guys might want to
a kit pretty soon,
Okay.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
So we may ask you to review it and see what you think. That would be helpful. Yeah. So we're thrilled to have actually met both of you as well, and everyone who's joined us today. So please reach out to us. We are right here. We're very accessible, and you can reach out at interfaith@idausa.org, and that email I will share with everyone here, and that will reach us there. So what a treat.
Lisa, there is a group within Unitarian Universalism. Perhaps you've heard of Unitarians for the Ethical Treatment of Animals.
Oh, interesting.
And they are vegans, and they also express ethical rights. So you might want to Unitarians for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, and then they're more than happy, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'll look at the kit. They've been doing it for a long time.
Fabulous.
Well, we have the Unitarian Universalist Animal Ministry, UUAM, is one of our members. And we've been talking to the gentleman, Lisa, what's his name?
Russell?
We're
in touch with Russell and also Jim Sainz.
Jim Sanis, yes. So I think we're already in touch with them, but the name you had, I don't know if that's a different group or if they changed the name to UUAM.
So for everyone who's joining us, I just want to do a little closing on the live Facebook real quick, and we'll continue our conversation. So thanks to everybody who's joined us on Facebook. The rest of us will continue on Zoom. It's really been a delight to have all of you here. We're doing a big wave and a nice namaste vegan for those who are interested in that, and have a beautiful, gorgeous, wonderful, spiritual, happy rest of your day. So thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Thanks, Sarah. This has been wonderful.
Great. So we're continuing. I just wanted to
that makes sense. I appreciate this is great. I'm so delighted to meet all three of you, and Winter too. I don't know if she's still with us. I can't see her on my screen, but okay. But this is wonderful. My people.
Yay! Well, we're all united in our heart and our compassion for all living beings. And if anyone else on the Zoom, if you feel more comfortable now that we're not on Facebook anymore, if you'd like to say anything, you're welcome to, or that would be fine. And if not, we'll close out our session because I think we're coming towards the end. But so I'll just say it's really very special to speak with everybody here today, and I'm grateful to all of you for joining us, and just invite you to stay connected, like Judy mentioned, through our coalition, and also through a lot of the programs that Sarah does. Reverend Sarah, she does some really amazing programs and all kinds of interesting books.
Put your contact information in the chat?
I did, and I'll throw it up there once again.
Yes, and if you could I think you have a new book coming out too. Yes.
I do, I have a new book that's coming out about animal loss. How do we ritualize animal death? How do we deal with animal grief, companion animals, and the rest of the world? So that's there on the website as well.
Wonderful.
Yeah,
Well,
that book, I got to peek at it, and it is fantastic. I mean, it's just a beautiful, beautiful book, and it talks a lot about grieving for animals, animal companions, and but also animals who've been killed on the road, you know, by cars. What do we do? How do we give them a send off? And Sarah goes into that, but somehow, even though these are sad issues, I don't know, she makes it so light and
Well, you know, it's
beautiful and
interesting.
uplifting.
Yeah, Judy, I mean, like I said at the beginning, you know, little chipmunks and little folks on the road really got me started. And then I learned that, you know, about 100 humans a day die on the roads in the US alone, which is horrible. And 1 million animals.
A day?
A day in the US alone.
Wow.
400 million animals a year on our roads. And so that's one thing, you know, that we can do in addition to what we're talking about, diets or what we wear or, you know, not going to SeaWorld, you know, what those things that we're doing is slowing down while we drive to allow a little more space and a little more time in case someone else enters the roadway. I like to say, you know, the other folks that are commuting with us, you know, that might be going against traffic across the road. And that's another area that if we can open up to seeing that. And another practice I do is if I pass someone who has met their demise on the side of the road, is to give them a blessing or to stop if it's safe and remove them from the roadside. Yeah.
I
so
carry
those kind of
gloves
things
in my glove compartment, just gloves and boxes to be able to do that. Because there's just something about that, the reverence for that temple that's in the road.
Yeah. You know, because you'd think if it was a baby,
Yeah,
or if it was one of us,
right. Right.
what would we do? Yeah.
Yes.
So
yes.
So if you go to the website there too, you can see there's information to get on the list to get the book. It's called Sacred Send-Offs when it's available later this year.
That's great. Thank you.
And you may find that sometimes if you do stop and go to the side that creature is still alive, and there may be a need to take them to the closest wildlife rehabilitation center. So I have done that and found that they were able to continue, such as owls and raccoons and other animals. So
I've heard that if they appear dead, but if you touch their eyes and their eyes move, that they're still living, and then they could be taken to a wildlife rehabilitation place to be healed. So that's important too. And but the other reason to take them off the road is, I'm sure you all have already figured this out, is so that crows and other animals don't get on the road, eat that animal, and get hit themselves. So it's what you're doing, Jenny, is so important. Getting them off the road. Yeah.
Well, thank you to everyone for sharing some of your spiritual practices with us, even being able to honor the dead or the dying, and being, willing to step outside of the comfort zone to do something kind for another being, even if they're not a human being. So thank you to all of you for joining us today in this really lively and endearing conversation. And hopefully we'll have some more, so stay tuned. We did go live on our Vegan Spirituality Facebook page, and you can stay in touch with us through the Interfaith Vegan Coalition. And yes, we are creating a community together, so we hope you'll join us.
Thank you. I might mention, because you mentioned vegan spirituality, Lisa and I interview people who are leaders in the vegan spiritual movement every other month, and they've really been great, fascinating interviews. Just the people have just been amazing, and Sarah was one of them, of course. And you can find out about them by going to the Vegan Spirituality Facebook page and joining, so that you know when we're going to do another one. And I think the next one will be in February, or
I'll put the
No,
link.
March? Will our next one be in March?
Yes, and I'll go
Okay.
ahead and put the, there is a vanity link here I'm going to put that you can click on. It will let you register for it. There you go. And so that way, if you want to join future ones, we also have a YouTube channel where you can find all the previous ones. And it's a vegan spirituality playlist. It's on the IDA YouTube channel. And if I can find it, I will put it in the chat box.
Okay, lovely.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. Wonderful. Well, again, thank you for joining us. And through all these great programs, we'll stay connected.
Sounds wonderful.
Thanks, everybody. Have a beautiful
Thank
day.
you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.